Okay, welcome back to the software development lab. I think we have covered quite a lot in the past. Still have a lot that we need to um, cover. So today we'll basically be discussing about security, how we can authenticate our users, how we can validate security. So this is going to be a very important aspect when it comes to software development, as you're going to see in a short while. So I'll share my screen. I don't know if you can be able to see it. I think these windows are also too many. I'll close some of them. Okay, so today's agenda is basically system security. So one is system security, and this will be managing users, managing user privileges, and also uh, what do we call it? Implementing user privileges. So this is what we're going to do for today. This is a very, very huge topic. So I'd want you to pay attention as much as possible. So if you had looked at our previous database design, you'll find that we left out security out. And that was deliberate because I intended to implement these separately. So I have SQL Yog over here. So I'll open Yog. You can use any ID to access your MySQL. Then our database here is called Expedia, which is flight booking here. So on the tables, you can see we don't have much, but I want to implement security so that you'll be able to see how that works out. So for security, first things first, we'll need to create a table for our users. So we have users. We can have user ID, which is an integer. This is a primary key and also auto increments. We have the username that they're going to use. So username, this is going to be variable character, can be 50. We have the first name and last name. All of these are going to be variable characters, maybe 100. Then we'll have the password here, which will be variable character. I can make it 100. Now I'll need something like assault. I'll explain what assault is, which is variable character. Maybe I'll give it 50 characters long. Is this user a system administrator? That's going to be boolean. By default, it's going to be 0. We'll also need the date that were added and who added them. Something like that. So, well, we can also check if the account is active, which is boolean. By default is 1. Yeah, I think this should do as far as the user is concerned. So when you're creating our user, I have a password here and I have a salt. Now what happens is when a user provides a password, the password will be very weak, and the password that you're going to store here anyway is going to be encrypted. So when the password is hashed, we want it to be as complex as possible. So what you're going to do is we're going to salt this password. So salt means this is going to be part of the password, then the other part of the password is going to remain with the user. So we have this salt, then the password that the user provides. We combine the two of them, then that makes the password very, very complex. So that way it makes it easier for easier for us to be able to secure the password even if the user provided a simple password, something like 1234. Somebody might not be able to decrypt the password even if they had access to the database to check what the password really was. So that's the advantage of salting these passwords. Now, once we have saved the user, we also have objects. We can create another table called objects. I'll save this one. And I'll have another table called objects. Now, objects are the user interfaces that we want to be able to access. So we'll have here object ID, object name, object code. Now we could use ID instead of the code, but we don't have the control of the ID. So it means that if you import it to a different database, we can end up with different IDs altogether, and that makes our code very very difficult to manage. But object code we can provide it because we know that now the users we are able to control what that code is, and that is what we can share with our application. So this is going to be variable character 100. Object code can be variable character maximum, say 10. It's not much. I'll save this one. Then I can create another table now called user privileges. So user privileges. So user privileges here, I'll have privilege ID, which is integer, primary key, auto increments. Then I have user ID, which is integer. Then I have object ID, which is also integer. And I have valid, which is boolean. Default is 1 most of the time. Date added and added by. So in any case somebody is given a privilege, we need to know who gave them the privilege and when the privilege was actually given. So now these are the three tables that I need in order to manage user rights or to manage security as far as my database is concerned or my application is concerned. So first and foremost, I'm going to create stored procedures for saving users so that now we can be able to create our users effectively. So here I'm going to come and say create a procedure. So first of all, I check if the user exists. So when I'm checking the user, I'm interested in the name of the user. The rest of the things are pretty okay. So the username is okay. So I forgot to provide their contact information. It's also important to have the mobile and their email because we might need to contact them in case they forget their password and that kind of thing. This might be important. This contact information might be important. So I'll have them there. Okay, this should be 100 and 100. Awesome. So when you're checking the user, again, we just need to provide the user ID and the user name. So again here, I'll come and say provide user ID, which is integer, username, which is variable character, maybe 100. So here I'll just say select all fields from this table called users, where the user ID is not the same as the user ID we have provided, but the username, sorry, is equals to the username that we provided. Something like that. Of course, we don't have deleted there, so that should be okay. So that should be able to check for us the user. That will check the user if they exist. Then we can now save the user. So sp save user. Again here, you're going to see that we're going to provide the details for the user that we are saving. Now, as I told you, this process is going to become very repetitive over and over again, even though we'll be learning new principles, but the content is going to become very repetitive. So I need to know the user ID that I'm saving. If it is 0, it means that I'm adding new. I need to know the username, which is variable character 100. I need to know the first name, which is variable character 100. I need to know last name, variable character 100. Can just go down here. Then after last name, we have password. Now password is a reserved word, so I'll say user password, which is variable character 100. I remove that. Then I have the salt. It's not going to be long, which is variable character maybe 50 in length. After that, I have mobile, which is variable character 100, and I have email, which is variable character also 100, and I have system admin, that is boolean. Then I have date added on it. I need account active. That is actually also by default, it's active. Then I have added by, that is username added by, which added by, which is integer. So those are the parameters that I need to pass to this stored procedure so that I'm able to save that information. Then of course, after that, I can now start the logic for adding the user. So I'll say if user ID is equals to 0, then add a new user, else update the user, and end. So just write the logic like that. It makes it easier for you to know what you are doing. So if user ID is 0, then I am creating a new user, new user. Otherwise, I am editing details of existing user. So how do we add a new user? We simply insert into this table called users. Sorry. So I'll list the field there, then I specify the value inserted like that. It's as simple as that. So here I'll insert them in this order: username, first name, last name, password, salt, mobile, email, system admin, get added, added by, account active by default is 1, so I'll just leave it at that. So yeah, and again, I can just move them down here so that we are able to visualize all the fields. So what is the field for username? It's username. For first name, it's first name. For middle name is, for last name rather, it's last name. For password is user password. For salt, it's salt. For mobile, it's mobile. For email address is email address. For system admin is system admin. For date added is the current date and time, which you can use now. And for added by is added by. So that's how I usually add them to make it easier. So I'll just break them so that they match. The variables on top match the field name on top so that debugging becomes easy in the event that I want to match them one to one. So that will do the insertion. So let's do the update. Update, we will say here, update this table called users. Then I'll change all the parameters. So I'll say set. So I'll say username is equals to username. Password, first name is equals to first name. Last name is equals to last name. Password equals password. Actually, it's user password. Well, we don't change password when you're editing the user's details. So I'll skip the password. Neither do we change the salt, but mobile and email address we can change. We can also change the system admin status. Then of course I can add my condition where user ID is equals to the user ID that was provided. Now you can see I've not changed the password, the salt, neither have I changed the date added and who added or whether the account is active or not. Those ones can be handled by other procedures because they are very specific functionalities that we might want to change rather than when we're just editing the user. So I'll execute that. That would allow me to save the user. So now I can go ahead and get all the users, get the user all the users. So I come here and say sp get all users. So here I just get a list of all our users with no filters at all. Well, maybe we can check if their status. We can add a column here called status, and by default status should be active. So when it comes to users, we can add here status. Car default is active. That's 50. So this one is either active or inactive. So if they're inactive, so this one active, um, deactivated date, and of course deactivated by. These are important. So reason active is a variable character. Maybe you can put 1,000 characters. Deactivated date should be date and time, and this should be integer. So you can see even as I'm creating my database, I'm determining other things. So if you're not active, then maybe we might not be able to collect your data. Otherwise, we might want to collect your data only if you're active. So when you're getting our users, I think we're just going to get all of them regardless of their status or not. So we can filter from the front end based on the users that we want. So yeah, I'll simply say select u.all fields, u.all fields, then maybe a concat a dot first name space a dot last name as added by name from users as you. Then I'll join. This is what we call cardinality. The same table, a user will create another user, right? So a user will create another user. So this created by will be somebody existing still in this table, and that's what we call cardinality. So still here, we'll join the table to itself, but with the different areas now. On a dot user id is equals to u dot added by, something like that. So I should be able to give us those two. So I'm going to take data from the same table as different tables, but then I'm comparing the user ID and the person who added so that I know which user added which user, something of the sort. Then here I can order by first name, then last name. As simple as that. So that should be able to get me all the users. So I can probably maybe display them inside a drop down list. Then I can get a specific user's details. So sp get user details. So for me to get a user details, I'll need the user ID, which is going to be an integer. So I need to provide the ID so that I'm able to get the details for a specific user. So whether I'm logging them in and all that, that would be dependent on the user logging in. So um, what I'll do here is I'll say select all fields from users where user ID is equals to the user ID that I provided here. So that should get me a specific user's details, and that is good enough. So there is only one thing left to do for us to create the class to actually save or actually manage the users. So I'll come back to our PHP or our project file, project application that we're working with, which is here. I think this is recording. Yeah. So we'll come to this project of ours. We'll come to condense all of this. We'll come to our models and we'll create a new model here called users.php. So of course this is going to be a PHP file. And then of course we want to inherit all the properties of the database because this is the only place that we can be able to connect to and from the database. So I'll come here and say require once Then I'll say, since they're in the same location, db.php. Of course, from there, I'm going to create a class called user, which extends the database class like that. Then, of course, I'm going to put all my functionality inside here. So, function, the first one is check user. The next function is save user. The other function is get users, or the other method is get users. Then another method here is get user details. Now the other functionality like reset user password, login user, we're going to build upon this as we move along. So I just want to start it small. Then as we are continuing to implement uh, our to implement our functionality, then we are also going to extend it inside here. So this is what we have. So for check user, it needs two things. It needs user ID and it also needs the username. So these are the two parameters that I need in order to check if a user exists. So I'll pick my global SQL variable. If you remember, the SQL variable is defined inside this db.php. So once we load that file, everything is going to be loaded here. So we have access to this variable here. That's why I declared it as a universal uh, variable up here, so that now every time I want to execute a query, I'll simply store my statement inside that SQL variable. Then I can be able to use it over and over. All right. So my SQL query will actually be this stored procedure here, which now tells me how to go about it. And I'm showing you how to do it professionally because you can see my PHP does not contain any SQL statements. And that's a good thing because we said stored procedures will come with a lot of advantages. The security, the scalability, it is cache, so it means it is fast, amongst many other things. You can easily it separates your code from your backend, so they're loosely coupled, which means that you can even have more than one application connecting to the same functionality without degrading anything. So that's the advantage that we are trying to take here. So even if I had 10 different applications accessing the the PHP server, an Android application, a web application, a desktop application, a USSD application, and all that, all of them would not degrade how my server operates because PHP will just pick data from wherever source it is that you're calling it from. Then MySQL will do its own thing as far as fetching and storing data is concerned. So I really want this one to get into your head because as you start developing your application professionally, this becomes a very, very powerful tool that you can be able to utilize in enterprise applications. Okay, so let's move forward. So user ID is a number. I mean, I'll just close it in curly brackets. Username, however, is a text. So first things first, after the comma, I'll put a single question mark, then I'll close it in brackets. So every time you're dealing with something that is a text or a date, then it has to be enclosed in single quotation marks like that. Right? Then here we will simply say return because we just want to return whether this exists or not. So I'll take my SQL statement and I will execute get data. Get data will just go into the database, execute, and bring me the results back. Once it brings me the results, I just need to check if the results have any rows. If there's any row, it will return true. If there are no rows, it returns false, which is what I'm looking for. If I am checking a user and any row is returned, then it means that that user actually exists. Again, just a repetition of what we were discussing last time. But again, since this is a very repetitive task, I want to make sure that we repeat it over and over again so that you're able to see how you would actually build your application. Some of these things are going to be repetitive, but they're going to be different in one way or another, though in terms of implementation, they are going to be more or less the same. So let's see how to save user. Now to save user, we need quite a number of fields. So I'll come to save user here and I will pick it with all its variables like that. Then I'll come here and say my SQL statement is equals call. Then I'll paste it there. Then I'll just remove the data types like that. I can say Control D, 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 D. It removes all of them like that. Then I left one. here. Then I can have that boolean gone and that one gone. So what I'll need to have here is these fields. So all these fields I'll need to pass them up to system admin, up to here. So I'll pass these ones as variables. So those are the variables that I expect to have in my system. So that should be like that. Then of course now I'll include these ones as variables. User ID is a number, username is a string, first name is a string, last name is a string, user password is a string. Well, here you can just use password, but let's just be consistent. Salt is also a string. Mobile is a string. So I'll just need to move these ones down so they're on the same line as this one. I'm just trying to make it look nice and not overlap my windows so that you're able to see everything. So mobile is a string. Sorry. Email is also a string. System admin is boolean, yes or no. And added by. Now this one we are going to use a session variable. For now, I just provide the value, but of course we are going to see how to get the user who was logged in. Then that is the person who we are going to pick at this point. So for now, I'll leave it as that. So what you're going to do here is you're just going to say, of course, before we save a user, we need to check if the user exists. So if the user exists, how do we check? We simply say if we pick our current object and then we execute this statement here or this method. It will either return true or false. Of course, this one should always be enclosed in a bracket like that. So that will check and it will return true or false. If it returns true, then we just return that the user exists. Otherwise, if it returns false, then we'll tell them the user does not exist, so we can go ahead and create the user. So here the user exists. So what we're going to do is we're going to return an array with a status of the user exists with a message of user exists like that. So I'll return that. Now, if the user does not exist, then we're going to save the user. So of course we have assigned that SQL statement. So we're going to say this get data. Then we're going to give the SQL statement. Of course, it's going to execute that SQL statement. Then from there, we're just going to return another array with status of success and a message that says user was saved successfully. Now, this is important because this API can be used by somebody else who is not you. So you just need to give them the feedback that is necessary. They're not going to see what's going to happen inside the API, but they're going to see the returns. So you need just to return for them something that is appropriate. So that should be able to save users for us. Now, how do you get users? Again, we simply take this SQL statement and we say call here get all users. It doesn't have any variables, so that's pretty straightforward. But because this data that's going to be returned back to our client, we'll simply say return this get JSON. Remember, we said every time we want to return data to our client, we return JSON. So it will encode it as JSON, which we had written functionality for. Here, get JSON will simply take that data and encode it as a JSON object. So we're just trying to avoid repetition of doing things over and over again. Again, when it comes to getting users details, I'll need the user ID. Then of course I'm going to run this. So I'm going to call this stored procedure called get user details, which is here. And of course, I'm going to remove the data type and then close this one as a variable like that. Then I'll simply say return this JSON SQL. That should be able to work. Okay, and this is good enough. This is good enough um, to get us started. But as you're going to see, it's not. It might not be really enough, so to speak, because I want us to build this thing over and over nicely, function-wise. So it means that it should do exactly what it's supposed to do. But so far, so good. We already have our users model here. Let's create our controller. So we're going to add a new file under controllers here, and we're going to call it user operations or whatever you want to call. You can call user controller.php. So inside here, this is also going to be a PHP file, and of course, it's going to, yeah, you don't need the closing tag, but I just like having it uh, from previous experience. So here we're going to require the file that has the template for the user. Now, since we are inside controllers, we need to jump outside controllers. So that means we jump outside controllers. Then once we jump outside controllers, now we are at Expedia. We need to go into models. So I go into models. Then inside models, I want to pick users.php. Users.php. This is very important. Again, I'm just repeating it for the sake of maybe those who did not understand how we did it last time. So because they're not in the same folder, this one is inside controllers. I need to jump outside controllers so that I'm at Expedia. Once I'm at Expedia, I need to go into the models folder. Then, while I'm inside the models folder, I'll get the users.php file over here. So that's the file that I want to load. Now, once I load it, I need to instantiate my class. So I'll create a variable here called user is equals to a new instance of user, like that. So this one is a template, which means it does not do anything. This one is an actual object, which now we can be able to use to be able to invoke all the functionality or all the methods that are exposed by this particular method. So we don't have any properties set yet. Maybe we could. It depends on what functionality you are looking for as far as your model is concerned. So for now, this model does not require any variables, any properties. So I'll leave it at that. But of course, the methods are there. Then I can be able to execute the methods effectively. So first and foremost, I'll need to check because from here, this is the file that's going to connect or interact with your REST API. So I need to know what somebody is trying to achieve. So here I'm going to save if is set, then I'm listening to a post variable and I'm listening to somebody saying save user. If somebody says save user, then I will execute the code that is going to be inside here. So whether it's going to be from Postman, it's going to be from a web application, it's going to be from an Android application, it's going to be from a desktop application, it doesn't really matter. What I'll be listening to, somebody has said post and they've said save user, then they've given me all the parameters, then I'll be go ahead and execute this save method and give them results as appropriate. So I'll copy this and I'll save it inside a response. So I'll say my response would be I'll take this user object that you've created, then execute this method as far as it is concerned. Whatever results is going to get will be stored on response here. So what I'm going to do, I'll just make sure that I echo because that's going to be an array. I can't output an array directly. I'll simply say response. So it will encode it as a JSON object back to the browser. But now I have not provided these other variables. So I also need to capture these other variables that are required coming from the form. So I'll say the user ID will come from a post variable called user ID. Then the first name will also come. First name will also come from a post variable called first name. And I can repeat the rest. Middle name. It's not middle name, there's actually last name. So last name over here. Then I'll also use user password. From the form, I'll just call it password. I don't need to call it user password. So I was just trying to be consistent with the backend, but as a form variable, I can just pass it directly. Then the salt, we're going to generate the salt. We're going to generate a salt here. So for salt, I'll leave it open. Then for mobile, I'm going to get it from the form. Okay, I needed to enclose that like that. Okay, then okay, I left one here. Then we also have email. So post email. Then I have system administrator. I'll also get a post for system admin. Okay, now for the salt, we can use what we call UUID or universally unique identifiers, or we can just generate some random 10-digit characters, something of the sort. Yeah, so sometimes this is where now AI can rescue you because sometimes I don't want to, I could simply say uh, PHP get universally unique identifiers, which is your UUID. So this function will generate a UUID, as you can see over here. Uh, okay, I have another one called unique ID here. So yeah, you can be able to generate all this. There's quite so UUID generator. This is actually a good tool to generate UUIDs. But I think let me use unique ID. So for a unique ID, it basically generates a time-based identifier. So when you run it, you should be able to see what it does. But I had written one of my own just to generate letters and numbers. So let me just copy and paste that for your case for purposes of saving time. I think I have it here and it's called generate random string, which is here. So I'm just going to generate some random string over here. So it doesn't do much, but I can actually put it here, or I can actually put it inside my database because I might want to generate the string in more than one place. So I'm not going to put it inside a class because it's just a function. So I'm going to put it outside. So it means that you can call it without initiating the class. So you can call it independent of the class. So when you say generate random string, then you give a random letter. So you can see I'm generating numbers 0 to 9, then A to Z lowercase, A to Z uppercase, then maybe some special characters like this. So if I was generating something like a password or something of that sort, then probably these are the characters that it's going to pick randomly and match them up to give me some random string. So ideally, that's what I am trying to achieve here. So I've written to the function. Yeah, I could have written it inside these users, but because I can use it in other places, that's why I've decided to use it inside the DB here, because from this file is always loaded every time we are instantiating any object. So it makes it very, very easy to access this function globally. So by default, it will generate 10 digits. If you want to generate more than 10 digits, then you can tell it how many characters you want. So maybe for password, we can use 20 characters. So I'll come here and I'll say the salt would be generate random number of 20 characters long. It's as simple as that. That will be able to generate the salt for you. Okay. Now, when we are talking about this password, we can pick it from the user interface, but the password that we are going to send over has to be hashed because we don't store our password as plain text. So it means that even if the administrator logged into the system, they cannot be able to tell what the user's password is. They can see some string, they can see the what do you call it? They can see the the salt, but they can't know what the password is because part of that password is with the user. The salt is only part of the password. The user has the other part of the password. So this makes your application very secure in terms of even administrators cannot be able to change a user's password and log in with those passwords without the system knowing that they have actually done that. So this is how you secure your application. Now for the password, so we'll simply say hash the password with salt. So now we'll have now the user password. We will take user password. Sorry, user password. We will take a hash. PHP has a hash function there. It takes two parameters. The first parameter is the encryption algorithm you want to use. Don't make it overly complicated. Don't make it simple. You can use MD5, which is very, very simple. I don't recommend MD5. You can use MD5, which is a very, very simple encryption algorithm. I don't recommend MD5. You can use SHA-256, which is very complex, but which is not very easy to crack, but also not very, very complex. So it means that it's not going to take a very long time to encrypt. So that's the one that I'm going to use. You can use SHA-512, which is twice as hard as SHA-256. So also depending on the application that you're creating, the algorithm for encryption will be determined by that. But SHA-256 is a middle point. It's not very easy to decrypt. It's also not very complex to take so much time to figure out. So it strikes a balance between the two. Then from here, now I'll give it the text that I want to be hashed. So the text to be hashed is, first of all, I'll take my password that the user has provided. Then I will combine it with the salt that I generated. So you can see now the password is not just some plain text. I'm going to hash this password based on SHA-256. Then what I'll do is I'll take the password that the user has provided. Then I will take the text that the system has generated. Then I combine those two to form a very complex password. Then the complex password that I have generated based on those two is what I encrypt. This makes it practically impossible for somebody to even use any algorithm to crack that password. And that's what we really want for this application. So that should be able to save our user. And then, of course, moving forward, we'll need to see what happens. So that is if I want to save the user. Now, let's say we want to get the users, get users. So for getting users here, we're going to simply say echo this user that we getted. Then we are going, sorry, to invoke this method called get users. And of course, to get a specific user's details, so we're going to come down here again. If is set get user details. If this is done, so we're going to say the user ID here is equals to get the user ID whose details we want. Then just echo this object called user, execute this method called get user details. As simple as that. Okay, so at least for now we have the REST API, and probably maybe the first thing we need to do is to check if it is working before we create the user interface. The user interface is going to contain more things than what we have over here, but this is going to be a starting point for us to see how that works out, right? So because I need a seed user to be able to even log into the system and create other users, I'll execute this using Postman. So I will open Postman here. Mm, I'll create a new request. This request is going to be a post, and it's going to be localhost. We're going to go into Expedia. We're going to go into controllers, then user operations. So this is where we want to be, and I hope that is the path. Let me just counter check that. So it is Expedia, controllers, user operations. So actually that is the correct path. So then here we're going to put there are no parameters, so it's going to be body. Then you're going to pass form data, because ideally we're passing a form. That's how post works. So here we have user ID, which by default will be 0. Of course, first of all, I have the operation to be conducted with is save user. This is going to be true, true. Then you have user ID, which is going to be 0. Then you have username, which is going to be maybe say admin. Then we have first name and last name. First name is system. Last name is admin. Then we have the password as 12345. Let's assume they put that symbol. Of course, you can always validate that the password is complex, but what would happen is our salt would make that password very complex, because we are going to generate a salt plus 12345. So that makes it very, very complicated. Then we have system admin. This one will be 1. So I want to create a system administrator. Do we have any other field that we need to pass? Let's just check. We have mobile and email. And yeah, so we only have mobile and email, then the rest are okay. So here we're going to put mobile. I'll put my mobile. Then we're going to have email. So I'm going to put my email. Well, because YouTube has restrictions on this kind of thing, I'll just remove this and put some random number, maybe 072 0, maybe 000 Then maybe this is test email at gmail.com, something of the sort. YouTube has restrictions on private data, so sometimes when you share private data, they'll pull down your videos. I want this one to be available for you for as long as possible, so let me not violate that. So I think these are the parameters that we need in order to be able to see if this thing really can be able to save a user. It's going to encrypt the password and also make sure that the password is not readable by anybody, and that somebody might not be able to reverse engineer the password to see what it looks like. So let's run this and see how this works out. So I'll execute it, and I hope everything is fine. So it should be able to tell me um, whether it was successful or not. So it's saying undefined variable username. I'm seeing I defined username here, so it's actually there. So let's just see why it did not check the username. So back to our code, and we'll check username. Yeah, we didn't pass username, so username is missing. It should be post username. Awesome. Yeah, so sometimes you can see you can make mistakes. It's possible to make mistakes. Let's try that again. Now it's telling me called to get data on a string. That's not allowed. So get data on a string. So it will uncode. Call to a mail function get data. And now this get data, let's see where did we execute it on the users here. Um, did we use get data, get data, get data? So we didn't specify the query to run. That's our mistake. We should have told it the query to run, which is this query at the top here. I think the rest are okay. Let's try that again. Send it over. Uh, function get data on a string. I think it's now there. Check user 0 admin. Let's see. Why is it? I think that one is fixed. So let me see. So called that's okay. Get the data. Oh, this should be this. Sorry. this can object would get data. I think I was confused when I was writing that code. So this is how it should be. Yeah. Again, mistakes, you write code, you make mistakes, as you can see, then you just correct them. So when you check that, it says violation MariaDB to use close bracket. So this is if we're doing what? Save user. So we just need to examine save user. Um, that has that backtick. That has that backtick. That's okay. Backtick, backtick. That is okay. That also looks okay to me. So what I'm going to do is let me just output these variables. These SQL variables, we just need to know what they are. So I'll execute that and I'll say PHP end of line, which means it presses enter once it's done. Then I can also output this. Before I save that, I can simply say echo SQL and PHP, create a new line, something like that. So I'm able to read what they are doing. So again, I'll just come up here, make this one smaller, run it all over again. So undefined variable added by. So yes, that is my actual issue. I had not actually read that. So you can see there's a comma and then added by has nothing. So this query would never execute. So that is the issue. So added by here, I need to say added by is, I'll give it a fixed value for now. So I'll come here and I'll say added by is equals to 1. Okay. Then, well, I might add it inside here because it's something that's going to be internally used. I can add it inside here like that. So I'll say this one, remove after implementing user login. Because after we've implemented user login, then we will know who was actually logged in, and that's the person we're going to pick from here. So I'll remove these echo statements because I was just using them to trap errors and see what my queries look like. So I'll run this again, and if everything is fine, I should be able to see a success. So it tells me a column is not found. There's a column called email address. So if I come back to my stored procedure for saving the user, so save user, um, here I have email, and here I've used email address. So either I stick here with email address because here I've also used email address. So I think that should be able to solve it. So this variable name should correspond to these variable names that I've used inside here. So that was the issue. Again, as you can see, when you write your code, you are able to debug them very, very fast so that now everything looks fine. So let's try that again. Now it tells me it's successful. It has been able to save the user successful. So let's go back to our database. And as you can see, this is what we give other people. So they don't have like the user interface that we have to be able to execute the things that we have. But if we give them the REST API with the parameters that are required, they're just going to execute and get the feedback back. They don't need to know what is actually happening on your endpoint. But let's go back to our database and check this user table and what has been stored inside it. So you can see we have, this is the password. This is practically not readable at all. If I took this password and I tried to reverse engineer it, that password is not readable. Now, this is what our user's passwords look like. We know the password is 12345. So basically, the password is this text here with the words 12345 at the end. So that's what the password looks like if somebody was to type it. So you see, the user has this part, the system has this other part. Then even if you tried to steal this password, it means that this password is going to be that complex. So it's not very easy to break this kind of a password. Okay, so hence I am really trying to insist on how system security is handled. Now, if I take this text and I even tried to decrypt it, so I can say I can go online and try to decrypt that password to get back the text. You'll see it's almost practically impossible for any engine to detect it. Password decryptor SHA-256. So even if I knew which algorithm was used, I cannot be able to reverse engineer that password. So the hash is this. So I have the hash. Okay, I have the hash here. So I have the hash here. Then I decrypt. Let me see if it will be able to do it. So you see, I cannot decrypt that because it is, first of all, too complex. If I use 512, it would even be more complex than that. But if you use something as simple as MD5, then that becomes a bit of a problem. Somebody can come to a website like this, then they can be able to see how you have encrypted it. So you can see MD5 is the easiest, then SHA-1, then SHA-224, then SHA-256. Then from that, I have 384 and 512. So I was taking something that is in between, not very complex, not very, very simple. So again, this is very, very important for us to be able to understand how that works out. Okay, so we just don't create applications for the sake of it. We create applications that are actually secure. Of course, if I try to run this again, because this user admin already exists, it should tell me that the user exists. So you can see the user exists. So actually our API is working as it should. Then moving forward, of course, now we should go ahead and create a user interface that will allow us to be able to, to be able to um, create our users. Now, creating a user interface to manage our users is not going to be easy because we need to create users. We also need to manage users who are existing. So it kind of like going to be not a so simple UI, but we also want to make sure that we are able to capture everything very, very effectively. Okay. All right. So let's see how we can create a UI that now we can be able to use for this particular API that you have just created. Any question or comment up to that point? So you can use your mic. Oh, there are people who are waiting here. So I told you not to come late. Eh? I really don't like the idea of um, you being late for class. Then I have to stop the class to admit it. It's not a very good thing. But anyway, let's go ahead. I'll open the chat to see if there are any questions. Um, so I'm not seeing any questions on the chat. You can unmute your mic, you can raise your hand, or you can type the question inside the chat box in case you have a question before we proceed. All right, so if there's none, let's carry on with creating our user interface that will allow us to be able to manage the users effectively. So first and foremost, I'm going to come to our forms here and I'll create a form here called users manager dot html like that. I'll put Emmet here and I'll say this is users manager. So I will divide this form into two parts. The part on the left will be to view the existing user's details. The part on the right will be to manage the user. Now the part on the right will also contain two parts. The top part will contain details of the user. The bottom part will contain the privileges that they can be given. So I want us to see how we can create that. You can create it however you feel like, but I think that approach works well. So I have left hand side for managing existing users. The right hand side has two portions, the top portion for details of the users, bottom portion for the privileges that the user can has been granted. And then that way it makes it very, very easy to manage that way. So here I'll have a div, I'll create a row, and this row is going to have two divs. So there'll be a div for users, then there'll be another div for users details, like that. Then the div for users will just contain a drop-down list showing all the users who are available. So I'll have here select with the existing users as this ID. Then it will be a form control, form control SM. Because I'm going to use Bootstrap, so I'll use the same here. Of course, I need to create this one as a form group. So I can put a label and I'll simply say select a user that you would like to manage. Then of course I'll give you this at the bottom there, like that. So that will be the first part, the part on the left. So left hand side, this will be the left hand side, then this will be the right hand side. So the right hand side is also going to be made up of um, two divs, one on top of the other. So I'll have div user. I can say this is users. This should be user details. This will be users details. So there'll be that section with user details. Then the other portion will be user privileges. So here is user details. Then this one will be user privileges. Okay. So of course, because I'm using Bootstrap, I'll need to to link Bootstrap here. So I'll say here link is a CSS file. I want to link CSS, then I'll pick Bootstrap and also Font Awesome. Um, that is Font Awesome. Then down here, I'll need to also create a script, which is a source. The source is going to go into JavaScript, and from JavaScript, I'll pick Bootstrap. Then I'll have another files. I'll need jQuery also, so I'll put script here. So here I'll go to JS again, then I'll pick jQuery. I think those are the only two that I need. Then from there, I can now add my users manager here. So users manager.js. So my files for JavaScript are going to be inside here. So I'll also include that. So I'll put script. Sorry, script. Source I'll put JavaScript. Then I'll put users manager. So everything should work out fine. So here, I just want to fill in the details and see how it works out. So for the users details, I'll have a form here that maybe I divide into three parts. So username, first name, last name, password, maybe email, mobile, and any other field that I might want to capture. So here I'll create a row, then I'll create a column, form group. Okay, so this form group, it'll have a label which says username. Then I'll have an input of type text, which goes for username, form control SM. So that is username, like that. So that will give me my username. Then I'll create another form group. So I want them to be side by side. Actually, should be a column first. Then I'll put a label. That would be for first name. So I'll put there first name. Again, I'll put this. I can type it, but I can just copy and replace this username with first name. I've just pressed Ctrl D so that I select the two of them so I can type them together. That's the advantage that Visual Studio Code gives you. Then I have last name is a continuation of this. So I'll paste that. Then I'll say this first name, Control D, Control D. Then you can change that to last name. So you can see I've created three different cursors, but just pressing Control D. So here I'll just change to last. So that row is done. Then I move to the other row where now I need to specify their passwords and their contact information. So again, I'll go to another row. So there'll be a column, then there'll be a form group. Then I'll put a label there for password, password. Then I'll put an input of type password this time around. Then I'll give it form control and form control small. So it's just small. Well, I didn't give it an ID. The ID should also been password, and the name should have also been password. Sometimes when users are typing the password, we might need to confirm their password. So this password, Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D. So confirm password. This one should be confirm password with a space, capital P, and this one should be password without confirm. So it was much easier for me to, yeah, you can be typing as you change, not a big deal. So I'll have password, confirm password. Then I'll ask if the user is supposed to change their password on logon. So here I can come and say again, uh, call dot form group. Then I'll put a label and change password on login. Change password on login, which means I want the user to change the password as soon as they log in. So here I'm going to use a select, and I'm going to give it this ID. Control SM. Then this is going to either contain two values, yes or no. By default, I'll put no, but then also I can put another option for yes. So from here, those are three. Then I need to create another row where now I can put the contact information. Okay, so I'll put dot row. Then from here I'll put the contact information. So dot call dot home group. So I'll put a label here. So there'll be mobile. Mobile. I'll put a field for mobile. Text. Mobile. Form control. Form control small. These are just bootstrap classes to enable you to style these things very, very fast as opposed to writing native CSS, which you could anyway. So this one, instead of mobile, it should become email address. So I'll just change this capital E and space and address like that. Then of course, because I want them to be uniform, I'll leave one column blank so that there are three columns consistently. So let's see what this UI looks like, first of all. So we run that. Yeah, that's how it looks like. Not very, very convincing. Um, so we need to do a bit of cleanup. So yeah, first and foremost, I needed to have this as a container fluid. So it needs to be inside the container, then everything will need to go inside that container like that. So let's see what that does. It has changed just a bit. Um, Not quite what I expected, but okay. Let's see. Um, because even this one has actually not implemented that. That has actually not even implemented that. hmm Let me see what is not happening here. Mm, um, Let me see. That doesn't change anything. I wonder why this. Okay, the form looks okay, but I don't know why it is not doing it properly. So what I'm going to do here is instead of this, let me put a class here of card. Then I have card header. This one has a H5 and it has existing users. Then I have card body here. Then I implement all this inside card body. Of course, I'll have other buttons down there for doing other things. Let me see how that looks like. Yeah, but that is actually okay. The card is actually there, but why is it not separating them? I have row. I don't actually need this because container fluid is actually container fluid with a hyphen. Let me put margin right of 2. Let me see how that works. It doesn't do anything. I'm wondering why. Let me see. Probably there's one thing that are not loaded. Um, it's telling me it requires jQuery, so I need to put jQuery first before I put JavaScript. So it should have been the other way around. Okay, let me see that. So there's now no error, but that does not change how things work out. So I need to come back and understand this container should fill in the entire page. It has centered it. Okay, but then I need to. Oh, I didn't put a column here. I need to put a column here. That's why it is misbehaving. Every time you have a row, you must have a column. And this one should have also been a column. Sorry, class here of columns. That was my mistake. I didn't put column. That's why it was misbehaving, I think. Yeah, but now what I need to do is just to say that it is container fluid, which means I want it to cover the entire screen, but then I want this portion to take a smaller part, so call MD, just take a quarter, the rest of the part should take the other portion. Yeah, I think that is much better, but of course we need to be able to give a margin top of the entire fluid to maybe say something like 3, the entire container, so that it does not touch the top. Yeah, something like that. So I have existing users on the left hand side, then users details on the right hand side. I've not provided any customizations on this yet. Of course, I need to provide my own CSS styles to be able to make this very effective. But you get the point. So we're just getting started. I can get a list of all the users from here. Then I can be able to create my users from here. So here I can have another card. That H, that is what, which H is that? That should be H5. Well, maybe try H6. But we can always format these headings so that they look nicer. Yeah, that's not very, very bad. But I also, this is too big if you ask me. So yeah, but I think that we can manage with that. So what we need to do is just to create um, um, maybe um, a card here for the user's details. So we say dot card dot card header, then H6, then we put user's details, then we put to then card body. So that will just enable me to create the card itself. Then I can pick the whole of this thing and place it inside there. Just playing around with it to make it look nicer, not some generic text. So I'm just trying to play with Bootstrap styles, something like that. So you see, it looks much, much better moving forward. Then, of course, I can create another card down here for user privileges, where we can now go ahead um, and um, and add all the user privileges. So I can collapse this these users details here. Then I can create another area which is user privileges. So I'll have here a div with an ID of user privileges. It's also going to have a class of a column because there's a row, and every time there's a row there has to be a column, otherwise it's going to not work nicely. So here I just have a table where I can be able to list all the privileges of the users. So I'll have here a table. This table is going to have a class of table and it's going to have borderless property. So that table is going to have borderless property. Then I'll fill in the details of all the privileges dynamically. Then after we are done with this um, portion, just inside this second column, I'll now go ahead and add my buttons. So there's button for saving, which we all know, button for clearing. So I'll have a button, btn class, btn success. Then I'll give it an ID of save user. Then I'll say save user. That's my button. Then maybe I can give it an icon of save. So I can give it i.font solid font save. Then I can make the icon a little bit large and I can make it have a fixed width, something like that. Then I'll have save. So after save, they'll be clear. So they'll be clear. And you can add any other buttons that you have. So clear will be clear fields. And this is not going to be save, it's going to be trash, like that. So you can see how it looks like. The buttons actually are off. They're on their own. They should be inside users details. Not actually inside users details, but they should have had their own div. So div buttons, then give it a column class. So now we don't need it to be a column. Actually, for this, we don't need them to be columns because they're going to be on top of one another. They don't need to be columns. Div, not dib. Then I can have the buttons inside here. So I've just created 3 separate divs inside this. This is a privilege. So now we are able to have the buttons are going to be here. Sorry. Like that. So now they're still out on their own. They need to be down here. What's the problem? I don't have the other card. Let me put here a card for user privileges. So I'll put dot card so we see what it looks like. Dot card. Inside the card we have card header. Card header is yeah. Then inside card header we have H6. And inside H6 we have users privileges. Something like that. Then from there we can do a card body. Then this table goes inside that card body. Like that. So let's see how it implements that, because we need them to be one on top of the other. So you can see it has gone on the right, which is not what we want. Oh, I need to create one column to hold all of them, because this is the first column and it ends here. So I need to have the other column, then all of them should be inside that other column. Otherwise, Bootstrap does not understand how that works out. So you can see you need to be very, very careful with how you arrange your content. But it's a good thing that we are learning how to do this. So as we move along, then our work is supposed to be pretty easy. So that's exactly how I wanted it to look like, only that now I need to have gaps between them. So on the users details, I just need to condense users details. So on user privileges, the card I can give it a margin top of 3, and also buttons I can give them a margin top of 3. Now for the buttons, I need to make them small because you can see these buttons are very, very huge. These buttons are very, very huge, so I need to make them a little bit smaller. So I'll come here and I'll say make the button small, and this one should be danger because it's clear, so also make it red and make it small, something of the sort. Yeah, that is now good. So the only thing that's left for us is to now fill in this data dynamically. So in short, I need to get the existing users, fill in dynamically. I need to get the privileges, fill them in dynamically. Then we can go ahead and implement this feature list over here. So yeah, I think that is good enough for us to get started. So maybe I can give you a task, because we still have a long way to go with this. I can give you a task to go and attempt to use this user interface to implement this API and see if you can actually save the user inside your database using this form when you click on save. Of course, there's going to be a part two of this, which we are going to extend further on how to implement this with the privileges and how to actually enforce the privileges. Okay. Any question up to that point? I know that's quite a mouthful, which you need to also look at and see how that can be achieved. But it's important for us to be able to understand how we can create these UIs using Bootstrap and what are the best tools for us to be able to use at this juncture. So, any question up to that point? We can ask questions. Then from there, I think we can take a break. We'll be able to move on. And you will use the class from 2 to to 4 just to familiarize yourself with what you've done and see if you can be able to replicate it, and also if you can be able to implement the save, which now allows you to be able to save the user based on the things that you've done. Because you can see when it comes to encryption and all that, that has already been handled at using our PHP. So when you're creating the user, we don't need to encrypt anything. But when you're trying to set the user via PHP, is when we build the logic for the generating a password and also encrypting that password using the SHA-256 encryption algorithm. So yeah, I'll take any questions. Then, if there are none, we'll be able um, to uh, take a closer at that. Then I'll allow you to practice what you have done within the next session of the class. Okay, so you can raise your hand, you can unmute your mic, you can also type in the comment box. So either of the methods that are available for you, you can ask the question, then be able to I can be able to respond to them. Any question or comment? Okay, so this will be Lab 7 Part 1. So we're going to do Lab 7 Part 2, which is now tidying up the other portions that are remaining so that we see how this authentication mechanism works. Right now, we're just trying to create a user. After creating a user, we're going to go ahead and do our authentication mechanism. So create a login form, allow users to log in. Then from there, based on the privileges that they've been given, allow them to perform whatever actions are going to be necessary. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So I'll take a break. Lab 7 is basically you trying to replicate this and see if you can be able to implement the save user. But if you can't be able to implement it, we'll go ahead and do it together in part 2 of this in our next class. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon.